Hi, my name is Eileen Maloney, and I am presenting on Functional Behavior Assessments, also known as FBAs. So what is an FBA? An FBA is an assessment of a student's behavior. It identifies the most severe behavior that needs to be addressed, and it determines why that behavior is occurring, its function. And it's based on the belief that behavior is functional, meaning that it serves a purpose, there's a reason why a behavior is occurring. It's predictable, meaning the same behavior will happen in the same sort of conditions. And it's changeable. A behavior is not who a student is. These students with behavior issues are not bad kids. If a student is not showing inappropriate behavior, it's because they don't know how. And it's our job as educators to teach them appropriate behaviors and to change their inappropriate behaviors. So when do we conduct an FBA? There are 4 situations in which an FBA is mandated by New York State law. Those are as part of an IEP process in which the student's behavior is impeding on their ability to learn or produce work, when a student is putting themselves or others at risk of harm or injury, when we're considering a more restrictive setting for a student due to their behavior, and when a suspension has been put in place that requires a disciplinary change of placement. So of course you can conduct FBAs informally whenever you like, but these are the 4 times in which they are mandated by New York State law. So how do we conduct an FBA? You can conduct an FBA by following the acronym DASH. D. Define the behavior in observable and measurable terms. A. Ask to learn more about the behavior. S. See the behavior in order to learn even more. And H. Hypothesize about the function of the behavior. So in the following slides, I'll go more into more detail about each part of this. So D. Define the behavior in observable and measurable terms. I'm sure that if you've been in Dr. Mack's class, this sounds familiar to you. Observable means it can be seen or heard. Measurable means it can be counted or timed. It's important to define the behavior objectively and specifically. For example, instead of saying a student frequently throws tantrums, you can say a student throws their body on the floor while crying and kicking their feet approximately once per day. So in this case, the latter is able to be seen by anyone. If a stranger happens to come into your room, they'll know if this student is performing the behavior or not. It's very clear. There's no ambiguity or gray area. It's either yes or no. So you try it. Instead of saying a child is so disrespectful, you could define the behavior in observable and measurable terms by saying what? You can pause the podcast here and think about a response. When you're ready, press start. So perhaps instead of saying a student is so disrespectful, you could say that the child rolls their eyes anytime they're given direction. There are lots of different ways that being disrespectful could be defined. It depends on the individual student and the specific behaviors that they're showing, as long as you can define them in observable and measurable terms. So after you define the behavior, it's important to ask to learn more about that behavior. So you want to conduct interviews with all the adults in the child's life, their parents, family members, teachers, their paraprofessionals, and related service providers. You want to learn as much information about the behavior as possible. What causes it, how the adult responds to the behavior, in which situations is it most likely to occur. This is really helpful information in determining why the behavior is happening, or the function of the behavior. You can also find out if there are any situations in which the behavior is more likely to occur, such as setting events. So setting events are anything that makes the behavior more likely to occur. It's not an immediate cause, but it's a more distant cause. So it doesn't immediately trigger the behavior, but if the setting events are in place, it makes the behavior more likely to occur in the future. So things such as not eating breakfast, or having a new baby at home, moving, maybe a poor relationship with the teacher, or a negative attitude towards school. Maybe the child just doesn't want to be there that day. I know when I don't get sleep, I feel really grumpy the next day, and I'm more likely to show negative behaviors. So things like this that make a behavior more likely to occur are called setting events. So once you've interviewed the people in this child's life, it's important to see the behavior in action. You want to observe the student in multiple settings, such as math, science, recess, to determine when, where, and why the behavior most frequently occurs. In a formal FBA, you want to do 10 consecutive days of observations for about 20 to 30 minutes at a time, and in various settings. There may be some settings in which the behavior doesn't occur at all, and other settings in which the behavior occurs a lot, and you want to figure out why that is. There are several different types of data that you can take. ABC charts are probably the most important in doing an FBA. You can also measure the frequency of behavior, its duration, how long it lasts, its intensity. Does it affect just that one child, or does it affect the whole class? How intense is it? And the latency. How long after a direction is given does the behavior occur? So arguably the most important type of data to be taken during an FBA are the ABC charts. ABC stands for antecedent, behavior, and consequence. So when you go into a classroom to observe a child, you are going to note every occurrence of the target behavior in the behavior column. When you see a behavior happen, you mark the antecedent, what happened immediately before the behavior, and the consequence, what happens immediately after. This often helps you to determine the function of the behavior, why it's happening. So here's an example. If the target behavior is hitting, maybe the antecedent was that the child was asked to do math work. The consequence was that the student gets sent to the office. So after you interview and see the behavior in action, it's time to hypothesize about the function of the behavior, why the behavior is occurring. So all behaviors serve the purpose of either gaining or avoiding something. Gaining or avoiding attention, gaining or avoiding a certain sensation, gaining or avoiding a task or activity. So for example, a student may tell an inappropriate joke in order to gain peer attention, or maybe a student kicks over a chair in order to avoid doing difficult academic work. There's lots of different reasons why a behavior occurs. But ABC charts are particularly helpful in determining why. So if we go back to our ABC chart on the previous slide, what purpose does this problem behavior serve? The child was hitting when asked to do math work, and the consequence was that the child gets to go to the office and doesn't have to do the work. One could determine that the purpose of hitting is to avoid doing an unwanted task or activity. The student has learned that if they hit when asked to do math work, they'll get out of having to do it. They'll get to go to the office instead. So once you've hypothesized, it's important to develop your formal hypothesis statement. Put all your data from all your observations and interviews together. So in this case, when the student is directed to do a task that he doesn't like, the student will hit in order to avoid the unwanted task at an approximate rate of 5 times per day. This behavior is more likely to occur when the student has not eaten breakfast that morning. So this formal hypothesis statement indicates the antecedent, the specific behavior, and the function of the behavior, how often the behavior occurs, and the setting events that make it more likely to occur. We will then use this hypothesis to develop a behavior intervention plan, or a BIP. I'm not going to go into detail about a BIP today in this presentation, but as a brief overview, a behavior intervention plan is to develop a competing pathway. That means it helps you to develop strategies to 1. Minimize the setting events, 2. Prevent the antecedents to the behavior, teach a more appropriate behavior that serves the same function as the inappropriate behavior, and respond to the target behavior. Once this plan is in place, it will help you to address the child's behavior and teach them more appropriate ways of behaving. So these are my references. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and have a good day.